If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. I'm sure that by now, many of you have already heard those exact words, so much so that you probably rolled your eyes the second I started reciting it, but I would be remiss to introduce the concept of the backrooms in any other way. Well, I was originally going to do a Built by Gamers parody skit instead, but my better judgment decided against it. Let me back up a bit to properly introduce myself. I am McTaurin, and I have been involved in the Backrooms community since 2021. I am the owner of r/Backrooms and r/The Backrooms. I was an admin of the Backrooms fandom wiki and a staff helper on the backroomswiki.wiki, and I am the creator of the Pantheon and Convergence. My work has been featured in videos by Blame It on Jorge and Raymundo2112. I have even helped other YouTubers like Brugly and Built by Gamers by providing them with research and notes for their Backrooms-related content. Not to mention, I am also friended on Discord with Bob Mazza, the owner of the Backrooms Real Life location. Therefore, I am one of the few people who are actually qualified to make such a video like this one. I've actually wanted to do this for a while, and since there hasn't been a major Backrooms Iceberg video since before King Pixels created his series, I think the time is finally right. Now, I'm sure you know the deal with these types of videos by now, and we both know why you clicked on this video, so let's stop wasting our time and just jump right in. Liminal spaces. Liminal spaces are the backbone of the backrooms, if you will. They serve as the bedrock, the foundation of it all. The word liminal is derived from the Latin term limen, meaning threshold. Therefore, the word liminal means of or pertaining to a threshold. Liminal spaces themselves technically have two definitions, a traditional objective one and a modern, very subjective one. The former classifies liminal spaces as physical points of transition between locations, like staircases, hallways, doorways, etc. The latter are basically places or images of places associated with a surreal or uncanny feeling, perhaps with a hint of nostalgia or déjà vu. Liminal spaces and media associated with them have existed long before the backrooms, dating as far back as ancient times. For example, we may consider the mythological labyrinth of the Minotaur to be an early example of liminal space fiction. There are also liminal deities worshipped by ancient cultures, like Janus and Portunus. More modern examples include Mark Z. Danielewski's novel House of Leaves and the Silent Hill franchise. The Backrooms, of course, is credited as popularizing the aesthetic and essentially serves as its poster child. The liminal space aesthetic is also a major influence behind more modern aesthetics like dreamcore, weirdcore, and poolcore. The Backrooms. For this one, let's go all the way back to the very beginning. Like, all the way back. That's right, I'm going full video essay mode for this one. In 1913, a department store known as Baum & Callan was built at 806 to 808 Oregon Street in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It later rebranded as Hirschberg's in 1945, before the building temporarily closed for renovations and then reopened in 1946. Hirschberg's closed its doors in 1955 for good, shortly before the death of its owner, Harry Hirschberg. In 1958, the building originally belonging to Harry Hirschberg came into the possession of Tom Rohner, who turned the location into a Rohner's furniture store following further renovations. Over the years that Rohner's remained in business, the building saw a few more minor renovations. In 1994, Rohner's would rebrand into a flooring store, with Tom Rohner selling the furniture portion of the business. The original location closed its doors as Rohner's relocated its business to a different building on the same street. During this time, Rohner's leased out the building to smaller businesses such as the Miles Kimball Warehouse Outlet and Knox Furniture. In 2002, the building was acquired by Hobbytown USA as one of its store locations. It was during this time that the building underwent its most important renovation, which was documented in a series of photos by a Sony CyberShot camera. In 2003, some of these photos were uploaded to the website of Hobbytown USA's Oshkosh location by Bob Mazza, the current owner of the building, to detail the progress of the renovations leading up to the store's opening. And there, those photos sat on this unassuming site for many years, with none of the involved parties suspecting what could possibly evolve from just one seemingly innocent picture. Somehow, the photo eventually began circulating 4chan, with the earliest known instance being in 2011. Then, on May 12, 2019, a thread was posted on 4chan's X board asking users to post images that feel off, with the image in the top post being the photo of Hobbytown's renovation. Further down the thread, someone replied to the image with the infamous creepypasta, and thus, the Backrooms was born. From there, people took to Reddit and founded r/Backrooms to expand the concept of the Backrooms, adding on more lore beyond the original post. Later in 2019, the Backrooms fandom wiki was founded. Then in 2020, the Backrooms wiki.wiki was founded. Liminal Archives was founded in 2021, and in the preceding years, many other minor wikis were formed. In 2022, Kane Pixels, created his iconic analog horror series, bringing the Backrooms into the mainstream, for better or for worse. In 2023, it was announced that a theatrical Backrooms movie based on Kane Pixels' adaptation was being produced by A24, set to release in 2025 as of this writing. Then, in 2024, the origin of the Backrooms photo was discovered, and American Horror Stories released their own adaptation of the concept. And that is now the landscape of the community that we find ourselves in today. Of course, those are only the broad strokes of the Backrooms real-life history. There is far more extensive history surrounding more specific aspects of the community, like individual wikis, but what I've given is enough for the purpose of this video. The front rooms. Within the Backrooms lore, the front rooms are the normal reality that humans will fall into the Backrooms from. In many cases, the front rooms are thought to be adjacent to or even overlap the Backrooms in some way, which is why so many things from between the two dimensions pass into each other. It is the goal of most, if not every human currently trapped within the Backrooms to find a way back to the front rooms. Levels. While the iconic yellow halls may come to mind for most who imagine the Backrooms, that is in fact only one small aspect of it. The Backrooms are composed of an infinite number of individual yet interconnected realms, colloquially known as levels. Each level is distinct and unique, with its own ecosystem, climate, and laws of physics, acting as a sort of pocket dimension. Endermitten, aka Ground Dweller, is credited as having first invented the concept of levels in the Backrooms with this DeviantArt post depicting Level 2 on May 19, 2019, merely a week after the 4chan post was originally published. Of course, levels are the bread and butter of the Backrooms lore, so this category has the most content attributed to it, with a very wide variety of levels to read from. While you may think of levels such as level 37, level 188, or level 974, there are also levels like level 51, level 404, and the Hallowed Gate. Entities. Before getting into the proper explanation, there's one specific point that I would like to make, but I'll just play a clip by Spaceman Scott because he said it best.
You see, this is something that I've noticed has been happening on the internet recently, is that a lot of people have been trying to give this, or spin this narrative that, like, the Backrooms were ruined by putting monsters in it, and by having it be this big spectacle, when in reality it was supposed to be this, like, incredibly existential deep dive into the isolation and the horrors that come along with being alone in a place with somewhat similar sights, smells, and sounds, but tortured forever by having no one else there but your own company, and being alone with your thoughts and regrets of the past. But, like, I went back and I reread the fucking green text original shitpost they put on 4chan, and the literal last fucking sentence is,
God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you.
Monsters were always a part of the Backrooms. What the fuck are you people talking about? But yeah, monsters were always a part of the Backrooms. So I don't know what the fuck these people have been smoking, that it was some kind of bastion for human existential, like, dread. That's a part of it, yeah, but there were always gonna be freaks in there.
So yeah, like he said, the concept of entities dates back all the way to the very beginning of the Backrooms, even predating the concept of levels. Entities are the diverse array of creatures and beings that call the Backrooms home. Their appearance, nature, intelligence, and morality vary greatly. They can be unique or common, abstract or humanoid, feral or sentient, good or evil. Some are motivated by primal instinct, while others have goals and aspirations. Now, when you hear about Backrooms entities, the first things that probably come to mind for you are the life form, or the chorus, or smilers and partygoers. However, these are an inaccurate reflection of the true extent and depth in the lore. There are many more entities than these, and far more interesting and compelling ones at that. Some notable entities include the Highborn, lunar chimeras, glowfolk, paragons, and penumbras. Even humans are technically considered to be entities due to inhabiting the backrooms. Objects. Objects are rather self-explanatory. They are, well, objects with certain anomalous properties that warrant their documentation. Some objects manifest within the backrooms as a natural occurrence, while others are created by certain people or groups for a specific purpose. Some notable objects are level keys, wall masks, golden artifacts, and the treasures of the void. Phenomena. Phenomena are the anomalous events and effects that manifest from the inherent properties of the backrooms. Notable examples include liminality, no-clipping, directed control, integration points, forbidden information, and avatarhood, all of which are featured on this iceberg. Groups. In a place as unfamiliar and isolating as the backrooms, individuals are bound to form groups for any sort of shared goal, if not to combat this isolation in some way. Some groups are ancient, while others were formed more recently. Some may be composed of humans, others composed of entities, and others composed of a bit of both. Most people probably think of Async, the MEG, or even the Party Crashers, but there are also many other interesting groups, some of which I will be explaining further down this iceberg. Persons of Interest. Persons of interest, often abbreviated as POIs, are singular individuals who are deemed important or noteworthy enough to warrant documentation. This could be for any number of reasons, such as holding a high position within a prominent group or having some sort of anomalous ability. Most are humans, but others could also be individual members of an entity species. Some notable POIs include Spec, A. River, Evie Holmes, Callum Andrews, and Weebu Jones. Tales. Tales are the actual, traditional, narrative stories that take place within the setting of the backrooms, rather than the typical in-universe documents that are usually employed to convey the lore. This type of storytelling is typically where the most development and depth takes place. Canons. Like liminal spaces, canons can have a sort of double meaning in the backrooms community. It can either refer to entirely different adaptations of the concept, like different wikis, or it can refer to different interpretations of the backrooms within a single wiki. Some wikis, like the Wikidot and Phantom Wiki, have multiple canons, while others, like Liminal Archives and Timeless Places, have only one. If you'd like a more in-depth explanation, then check out Brugley's video on the topic, though it's a bit outdated by now. Level 0. Though it may be known by different names, Level 0 is always the one constant throughout every interpretation of the backrooms, which unifies them all. King Pixels, American Horror Stories, and the wikis alike all have it in some form. Level 0 is of course based on the image in the original 4chan post, and as such has most of the characteristics described in it as well. It's usually the very first place that one finds themselves in upon entering the backrooms. Going back to an earlier point about entities, surprisingly none of the major wiki-based interpretations of the backrooms have entities within Level 0 thus far, even though it would technically be faithful to the source material. Ironically, only Kane Pixels and American Horror Stories have actually put entities in Level 0, or at least their equivalents. Liminality. Although liminal spaces are a mere aesthetic in real life, there's an actual force behind them within the lore of the backrooms. Phenomenon Zero, aka liminality, is characterized almost as a sort of entropic force, slowly turning normal spaces and beings into liminal ones. That's right, it affects beings too, since the force of liminality is the cause of the wretched cycle, which turns humans into wretches and dogs into hounds. If you spend some time reading the backrooms wikis, then you may find that not all levels seem to be liminal, but this is due to the fact that they don't usually begin that way. Most levels, especially newer ones, appear to be an attempt to replicate vague environmental imagery from the observer's memory in a manner akin to procedural generation. Said spaces tend to initially begin with perfect stability, seeming indistinguishable from locations in one's native reality and lacking any distortion. However, due to their imperfect and flawed nature, levels do not remain stable forever, and the cracks in their design begin showing as the entropic effects of liminality bleed through. The longer liminality affects a space, the further the space warps, abstracts, and deteriorates. This process is known as liminalization, in which the space gradually adopts characteristics such as distorted lighting, outdated aesthetics, lack of furnishment or decoration, repetitive features, non-Euclidean geometry, and a labyrinthine layout. Therefore, the levels that are not liminal are merely those which haven't yet succumbed to the process of liminalization. Almond water and liquid pain. Almond water and liquid pain are on the same entry because, within the lore, they are essentially the same substance in different forms. Almond water is a liquid found within the backrooms that treats most minor ailments and injuries, and also serves as a source of nourishment. It can also reverse the effects of the wretched cycle at an early stage. It has a vanilla, almond scent and bears a pearlescent color. Liquid pain, meanwhile, is the exact opposite, inflicting physical agony upon any who interact with it. It bears the same vanilla almond scent as almond water, but the color of the substance is instead a deep crimson. What's interesting, however, is that minute traces of one substance can be found in samples of the other during analysis. It has therefore been concluded that both substances have the same origin. What is that origin, you ask? Well, it will be revealed further down. No-clipping. Another concept originating from the 4chan post, no-clipping serves as the primary means of accessing the backrooms as well as traveling within it. It's a form of temporal phasing in which one bypasses the boundaries of spatial reality. Or, in layman's terms, it's like when a video game character no-clips through a wall and ends up out of bounds. In this analogy, the backrooms is meant to be like the out of bounds of reality, which is also implied by the 4chan post. Within the backrooms, one can also no-clip between levels, which is usually how wanderers progress further in their journey. It is believed that no-clipping is a common occurrence within the backrooms since the veil that separates it from other realities is heavily compromised. The MEG, the Major Explorer Group, currently standing as the most prominent human-led faction, was founded on the goal of exploring and documenting the backrooms in the hopes of eventually discovering an exit to the front rooms. The group is divided into multiple teams which specialize in certain tasks. The MEG is responsible for a large amount of the files and documents found within the in-universe database that the wiki pages are hosted on. People unfamiliar with the Backrooms lore tend to portray the MEG as some sort of highly organized and competent military group, or an SCP Foundation-like organization, with all these resources and advanced technology, but this is extremely inaccurate. In truth, most members of the MEG are average everyday people. They're more akin to a survivor group from The Walking Dead, scavenging the backrooms for resources and looking for some way to escape, or at least carve out a comfortable life. The age of the group can vary depending on the canon, but regardless, it is relatively new in the standards of the backrooms. The Hub. The Hub is the nexus of the entire backrooms, containing an entrance to every single level, including those yet undiscovered. It appears as a vast network of subterranean traffic tunnels lined with evenly spaced doors bearing designs representing the respective levels that they lead to. The order of the doors does not correspond to the order of levels in the database, however. There is only one door for each level, marked by a unique runic symbol. A level door can only be unlocked by its respective level key, which is engraved with a symbol corresponding to that on the door. After being unlocked, the door will immediately lock itself upon being entered. Hostile entities are unable to enter the hub, but benevolent ones are able to. One can access the hub from any level of the backrooms, either by accidentally no-clipping into it, or finding a door that can randomly manifest. Or, you can simply follow a specific sequence of turns in level 1 to reach the hub. Level keys. For every level in the backrooms, there's a level key, which varies in appearance depending on its respective level. Said level is identified by a runic symbol engraved into a small rectangular label on the handle of the key. Each symbol on each key for each level is unique, corresponding with the symbols above their respective level doors within the hub. All level keys resonate with their respective levels at a degree of intensity relative to their proximity to an entry point. As such, a level key may act as a compass of sorts towards its respective level. In some canons, the frequency of a level key's resonance is used to determine the number that is assigned to a level in the database. The Keymaster. Entity Key, the Keymaster, is an avatar of Key, the Pillar of Access. He is the creator and overseer of the hub, and is the sole creator, proprietor, and distributor of level keys. He is perhaps the most prolific and recurring singular character throughout every interpretation of the backrooms, having the most variants in the most canons out of any character. For this entry, we'll be looking at the variant from the Wikidot and Pantheon canons. This version of the Keymaster, formerly known as Gatekeeper, is the husband of Solaris and the father of Ceres and Nebula. In ancient times, Gatekeeper reigned as a liminal deity over the Backrooms, being worshipped by ancient humans. He served as a guardian of thresholds, a guide to travelers, and a jailer of the wicked. However, his heart hardened when his contemporaries began dying off, or became estranged from him, and he turned cruel. Gatekeeper was ultimately assassinated by someone infiltrating his inner circle of worshippers. His essence was then infused into his own cloak by his oversoul, forced to seek out the most compatible host to wear the cloak and bear the title of the Keymaster. The most recent wearer of the cloak was a human named Brian Smith, who had been the Keymaster from 2014 to 2024. Currently, however, there is no wearer for the cloak, and the Keymaster is now instead a completely independent being which has regained all of his memories. The Keymaster's associated aspects of the Backrooms are the hub, level help, level keys, the Hermes device, the Cat Master, liminality, and no clipping. The Game Master. Entity 99, the Game Master, is the second avatar of Comoid, the Pillar of Humor. She appears as a life-size marionette with a yellow and blue jester costume, concealing a deformed face behind a mask that digitally displays a red pixelated face to convey her emotions. She has a rude, obnoxious personality and is obsessed with games, memes, and brain rot. The Game Master is bound to level 389, the Gaming Hall, which he commands a nigh-omnipotent degree of influence over the realm. To entertain herself throughout her imprisonment, she likes to lure wanderers into her level and force them to play games with her. These games are generic knockoffs of more well-known ones, and more often than not have some sort of sadistic twist or are rigged in the Game Master's favor. Little is known of her past, but the Game Master was once a human girl in the front rooms named Penelope Ludumson, living in London in the 1920s before falling into the backrooms with her sister Diana Ludumson. Diana would be transformed into the entity known as the Dollmaker by another entity known as Mother, though she still did what she could to protect Penelope. Eventually, however, Penelope would die. The Dollmaker constructed a new body in an attempt to revive her, but she lacked the power to give it life. That was when the comedy creator, the first avatar and direct incarnation of Comoid, intervened and facilitated the transfer of Penelope's soul into the body. She was thus reborn as the Game Master, but was bound to the comedy creator as their champion, before eventually becoming an avatar of humor herself. Her associated aspects of the Backrooms are level 389 and the Game Player. Argus. Entity 74, Argus, is an avatar of Savinex, the Pillar of Justice. He was the husband of Protestia and is the father of Hubris and Humble. He is the patron deity and supposed founder and leader of the Eyes of Argus, self-proclaimed vigilantes of the Backrooms who operate in several distinct patrols, each exercising a different form of justice, but all unified in their objective of purging so-called sinners from the Backrooms in Argus's name. In ancient times, Argus was known as, whatever that says, which is apparently the Aztec word for justice. Argus has appeared throughout the ages, and to a variety of collectives, as the embodiment of however they perceive justice. This means that his appearance was unique to whoever perceived him, but he generally appeared as a tall humanoid wearing tactical armor under a ragged black cloak, wielding a spear and possessing clusters of glowing orange eyes, some of which externally orbiting his physical body. It is from him that morals structured their laws and morals, and many have prosecuted the guilty and liberated the innocent in his name. He is the self-proclaimed judge, jury, and executioner of the Backrooms. He is known to strictly uphold and enforce a set of rules known as the law, which he claims to be the highest and most objective moral code. If someone is discovered to have sinned, or rather violated the law in any way, Argus will proceed to hunt them down and deal whatever punishment he deems fitting of the supposed sin. The exact definition and contents of the law have never been revealed, making it impossible to know how to avoid sinning, and thus leading to quite a few diplomatic incidents with other groups. His associated aspects of the Backrooms are the Eyes of Argus, Locros, and Retributors. In the fandom and convergence canons, he is known as Argus with a U, and is the king of the royal court. Blanche. Entity 140, Blanche von Hatterich, is an avatar of Azalkyra, the Pillar of Curiosity. To most, she is a humble librarian overseeing level 906, the Cygnus Archive, which is regarded as a safe haven and a hub of knowledge and wisdom in the Backrooms. Kind, polite, and a firm advocate for pacifism, Blanche's respect for her guests is matched only by her eagerness to learn more. In ancient times, she was known as Cygnus, among other names like Kari, Azkari, and Vashea. She was revered as a goddess of knowledge and wisdom, appearing in myths such as the Book of the Moon, verse 1, and the Scroll of Azkari. When humans rose up against the gods, however, she distanced herself from most of the others, not wishing to retaliate against the humans like they did. Today, she remains isolated in level 906, though she does still maintain relationships with some of her former contemporaries. Her associated aspects of the Backrooms are level 906, Barry, Tom von Hatterich, Object 96, the Cygnus Order, and the Visionaries of Barry. In the fandom and convergence canons, she is known as the Storyteller, serving as the scribe of the royal court. The Red Knight. Entity 71, the Red Knight, is an avatar of Jagadane, the Pillar of War. He is also the husband of Shani, his former champion who later became an avatar of war herself. He is a mysterious warrior that often appears to save newcomers to the Backrooms from deadly situations. In ancient times, he was a beautiful god with red ribbons known as Claudius, holding many titles such as the Champion, the Grand Empyrean, and the First of Knights, striking mortal fear into the hearts of his enemies. He is also credited as the creator of almond water, which he created from his own blood, liquid pain. He was close with several other godlike entities, being brothers in arms with Argus and fighting many battles alongside him. Following a deadly battle with Augustus, Claudius died and returned as the Red Knight. He now wanders the Backrooms and saves mortals, seemingly as a form of atonement for his past actions. His associated aspects of the Backrooms are liquid pain, almond water, the Squires, and the Order Elisan. In the fandom and convergence canons, he is known instead as the Crimson Wanderer, serving as the Knight of the Royal Court. Nostalgia Gaius. Entity Null, Nostalgia Gaius, is an avatar of Karot, the Pillar of Art. She was the wife of Augustus and is the mother of Shaltokol. In ancient times, she was known as Gudang, a muse who inspired and reflected the works of art created by mortals. However, she was also obsessed with perfection and beauty, which made her constantly dissatisfied and insecure. When the veil of the Backrooms teetered on collapse, Gudang created level 404 in a last-ditch effort to mend it and prevent cataclysm. However, it led to Claudius and Augustus killing each other and completely destroying the veil. She was unable to cope with this and process her grief, and so she effectively lobotomized herself by literally carving memories out of her head with a shard of the sky. Gudang was then reborn as Nostalgia Gaius, a corrupted husk of her former self who preys on nostalgia for sustenance. Her appearance resembles the real-life sculpture Diana of Gabi, albeit with minor distortions such as a pastel hue. In the modern day, a senior archivist with an MEG named A. River discovered Nostalgia Gaius and merged with her in an attempt to prevent her from threatening the Backrooms. An internal war ensued as both River and Gaius fought for control, but with the help of other godlike beings like Blanche and the Keymaster, they eventually perfectly merged into a new being named Symmetria, also known as the Blue Angel. This being is helpful to wanderers and saves them. Her associated aspects of the Backrooms are level 404, Strange Pills, Anomalies Sign, the Muralist, A-River, and Eden G. A fun fact about Nostalgia Gaius is that many names in her lore are based off of an album by Windows 96 under the pseudonym Gudang, titled Nostalgia Gaius. Among the track titles are Claudius, Augustus, Nunca, Strange Pills, and other familiar names and phrases in the Backrooms lore. Icarus Procedens. Icarus Procedens, formerly known as Augustus, is an avatar of Kurimas, the Pillar of Creation. He was the husband of Gudang and is the father of Shaltokol. In ancient times, Augustus was an angelic being of unrivaled beauty and ambition. He spun flesh, blood, and bone from his fingertips, being responsible for the creation of several common entities. Following a deadly battle with Claudius, Augustus fell and became a charred skeletal being within the Shady Gray. Now known as Icarus, he will often project an apparition of himself across the Backrooms to torment others as a means of coping with his own eternal torment, even if only temporarily. Various murals of a dark, shadowy figure and a maniacal laughing from behind the bars of level 3 are perhaps the only thing left of what Icarus once was. His associated aspects of the Backrooms are the Shady Gray, level 3, Arkham, the Highborn, and the Ultimate Backrooms Cookbook. Solaris. Entity 700, Solaris, is an avatar of Alcon, the Pillar of Space. She is the wife of the Keymaster and the mother of Ceres and Nebula. In ancient times, Solaris was known as the Star Mother to her worshippers, and was responsible for maintaining the heavens by creating and destroying celestial bodies. After the death of her husband, and more recently the cataclysmic collision of Level 78's space station with Ad Astra, Solaris became much more reserved and isolated, feeling as though she has failed her purpose. Her associated aspects of the Backrooms are all of the space levels like Level 78, and all of the space entities like Nullo 6, the Death of a Star, Aster, and Encelanique. Philia. Entity 59, Philia, is an avatar of Agoth, the Pillar of Love. She is a merciful and compassionate goddess who loves humans dearly, having a more humanoid form than other gods in order to be closer to them. She is always seen around people and animals, warmly offering unconditional love and kindness without expecting anything in return. However, she is incapable of handling negative emotions like sorrow or heartbreak, struggling to process them. She is very kind and forgiving, having a bleeding heart almost to a fault. Her associated aspects of the Backrooms are Level 150, Mother, and Olivia Belrose. Iliad Elion. Iliad Elion is an avatar of Two-Faced, the Pillar of Stupor, and is the husband of Olivia Belrose. He has had many titles and forms, but most commonly appears as a tall, long-haired, pale man, cloaked in an ashen blue royal robe and wielding a living sword made of silver flesh, known as bitter steel. By all accounts, Iliad is a master combatant, but not exactly for the right reasons. He was indirectly responsible for most of the conflict in the Pantheon's narrative, having committed the massacres which led to the uprising of the Iron Fist. After this, he went into hiding, only reappearing recently in the modern day. His associated aspect of the Backrooms is Grey Realm. The Lost. The Lost is a collective moniker held by the remnants of those who once comprised the oldest, largest, and most powerful human civilization in the Backrooms, having arisen from the intermingling of many ancient cultures. Their capital city was Hufstad, known today as Level 51. They were known to keep many secrets, many of which still remain undiscovered. Though they have long since declined from their golden age, forgotten by time, one goal unifies them all: to be remembered. The Pantheon. In the lore of the Backrooms, the Pantheon is both a group and a canon. So far on this iceberg, I've already covered several godlike entities. The general premise of the Pantheon is that all of those aforementioned entities, as well as several others, are in fact functionally gods, and were all once part of a pantheon that ruled over the Backrooms in ancient times. Practically every element of the Backrooms is in some way attributed to the Pantheon or a member of it, making them responsible for the very creation of the Backrooms itself. How did that happen? Well, in the beginning, these beings were abstract, formless bodies of light, like living constellations, inhabiting the void. Eventually, they grouped together and formed a close bond, symbolically regarding each other as metaphorical siblings. They decided to create a universe together as a personal paradise, which we know today as the Backrooms. This means that they are responsible for most, if not all, of the Backrooms levels, entities, objects, phenomena, etc. However, they neglected to fully mend the veil between their reality and others, leaving it vulnerable to potential contamination from other universes. This led to the eventual arrival of the first humans in the Backrooms. Upon discovering the avatars, the ancient humans couldn't properly understand the true nature of such powerful and incomprehensible beings. They could only equate them to gods, and so that is how they perceived them. The avatars, meanwhile, couldn't understand why the humans were worshipping them. But they decided to lean into it and form a group they called the Council to govern the inhabitants of this reality. The mortals instead saw this council as their pantheon of gods, and so that is what it became known as. Following the pantheon's foundation, the humans went on to form the Lost, the oldest and largest human civilization in the Backrooms. For centuries, the Lost worshipped the pantheon without hardship or struggle, as this universe was a paradise. Over time, the gods' forms gradually became more comprehensible and humanoid due to interacting with humans more regularly. But everything changed one day when one of the gods, Iliad Elion, suddenly snapped and massacred entire villages of mortals for unknown reasons. This is the turning point in history where humans grew distrustful of the gods, who also grew distrustful of each other. A group of humans eventually formed a rebellion known as the Iron Fist to revolt against the Pantheon. As the Iron Fist discovered certain weaknesses to the gods and the means of exploiting them, an all-out war spiraled between the Pantheon and the Iron Fist, with numerous casualties on both sides. In the end, several gods were killed or crippled as the result of this war. The Pantheon collapsed alongside the Lost, and the Iron Fist went into hiding. This was also the point in which the Backrooms transformed into the desolate, liminal state that people recognize today. This essentially means that the Backrooms was once a pure paradise created by and for gods, but ultimately corrupted and perverted by the intervention of humanity. Today, the Pantheon as a group is non-existent, but some of its members still remain, albeit in a much weaker state. Some of them have reunited, but not all yet. And as the gods reunite, the Iron Fist also seems to be re-emerging in new forms like the UEC and Backrooms Robotics to finish what they started. Now, bear in mind, that's only the surface lore, but there's also a shit ton of deeper lore that warrants its own iceberg. The same holds true for entries on this iceberg about individual Pantheon members, which only cover surface lore. It's highly recommended to do your own research on the canon and its lore yourself. The primary source of information for all of this lore is the Backrooms Pantheon wiki, which I'll include in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. The Royal Court. The Royal Court can almost be thought of as an AU version of the Pantheon. It is a group of godlike entities in the universe of the Convergence lore, consisting of some familiar characters and other unique ones. But rather than be organized as a pantheon, they are instead, well, a royal court. They have their own long and storied history comparable to that of the Pantheon, but that is probably better suited for its own video. The primary source of information for lore related to the Royal Court is the Backrooms Convergence wiki, which I'll include in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. Avatars. Avatars are the type of being that every member of the Pantheon and Royal Court are classified as. When I refer to individual godlike entities as avatars, this is what I mean. It is less of a species and more of a nature. Avatars act as extensions of their oversouls, known as the Pillars, from which they draw power and from which they are manifested, or to which they are linked. Some avatars are directly controlled by their oversouls, while others are completely independent in consciousness. Some avatars are even unaware of their own nature. Usually, avatars will group together in alliances to govern their respective reality, with the Pantheon and the Royal Court being examples of this. Basically, every godlike being in every version of the Backrooms is an avatar unless otherwise specified. Wraiths. Wraiths are the spectral remnants of souls in a state of perpetual unrest and cyclical revival, often vengeful in nature. In most cases, typically with mortal beings, wraiths do not retain the mental faculties that they once held in life. However, the concept applies somewhat differently to avatars, since they cannot die like mortals and thus don't have to truly die in order to spawn wraiths. They can have a sort of false death, leaving them fragmented, or be split at the point of inception. In this regard, wraiths are essentially fragments of an avatar's soul or personality or memories that splits off into an independent being. Examples of this include Philia with Mother, Lorenzo Windsor with the Animated King, and Nostalgigaius with Animoy's Sign. The Iron Fist. The Iron Fist is a group dedicated to the sole purpose of eliminating godlike beings, specifically avatars. It dates back to the time of the Lost, having been founded by Kushim in the wake of Iliad Elion's massacre. It consists of 5 divisions, or fingers. There's the Mars Finger, known today as the UEC, who are the militia of the group and participate in most of the direct offensive operations. Then there's the Jupiter Finger, focused on research and experimentation. The Saturn Finger oversees the entire group and governs all other fingers. The Soul Finger, known today as Backrooms Robotics, specializes in technology and engineering. And finally, there's the Mercury Finger, the infiltrators and assassins of the group. Kushim. Kushim, also known as the Gravedigger and Barsil Barag, is the second avatar of Ilthli, the Pillar of Mortality. He was once a mortal human from ancient Sumeria who fell into the Backrooms before eventually meeting Lilith, the goddess of life and death who served as the original avatar of mortality. He would train under her, becoming her champion and eventually her lover. Sometime shortly before or after Lilith's death, Kushim founded the Iron Fist, an action he later regretted. Kushim went on to become an avatar of mortality after reclaiming the essence of all his champions to narrowly survive death in a battle with Gatekeeper. After this, he abandoned the Iron Fist, which only became further radicalized in its god-killing ideology. His associated aspect of the Backrooms is the Grave. UEC. The Unbound Explorers Coalition, or UEC, is a paramilitaristic mercenary group, standing for outspoken ideals and values which they claim the MEG has failed to uphold. As previously stated, they are a modern front for the Mars Finger of the Iron Fist, though this isn't common knowledge in universe. Backrooms Robotics. Backrooms Robotics is a company which develops and manufactures technology for the benefit of wanderers, with the ultimate goal of improving the quality of life within the backrooms. They have had involvement in the creation of most technological objects and entities, such as the Artificial Intelligence-Driven Entity Neutralizer, or AIDEN. Despite their publicly stated intentions and goals of their creations, they seem to harbor ulterior motives and have been linked to several scandals and conspiracies, such as whistleblowers dying under mysterious circumstances. As previously stated, they are a modern front for the sole finger of the Iron Fist, though this isn't common knowledge in the universe. The Broken. The Broken is a dimension equivalent in size to the backrooms and front rooms, and is by far the most unstable of the three. It is a jumbled mess of fragments of reality, basically being a dumping ground for things that fall out of or break away from the backrooms. This usually entails old dead levels, but even beings can end up here as well, as we'll see in the next century. It is theorized that the front rooms, backrooms, and Brokens are all linked, with the front rooms representing order, the Broken representing chaos, and the backrooms representing a liminal state between the two. Anomalies Sign. Entity 403, Anomalies Sign, is the wraith of Nostalgia Gaius. She was formed from the memories that Gudong carved out of her head after the deaths of Augustus and Claudius. Those memories ended up in the Broken, where they lay dormant for eons. After the merging of Nostalgia Gaius and A River into Symmetria, the memories were stirred from their dormancy and formed into Anomalies Sign, escaping from the Broken into level 404. She would eventually merge with A River's lover, MEG operative Eden G, into a new being known as Rhythmos, who seeks to reunite with Symmetria. The Pillar Scribe. The Pillar Scribe is the second avatar of the Terminus, the Pillar of Balance. He was once a human named Paris who fell into the backrooms before finding himself in level Theta, where he was tortured by the Terminus. He would eventually be rescued by Blanche, but by then he was already irreparably disfigured. He had become an avatar of the Terminus, being forced to transcribe everything that the Terminus dictated. Due to this, the Pillar Scribe is the primary source of in-universe knowledge regarding the Pantheon, notably the nature of pillars and avatars. Basically, you have him to thank for a lot of the Pantheon lore in this video, but something tells me he isn't too happy about that himself. The Gearmaker. Entity 151, the Gearmaker, is an avatar of Chronolectra, the Pillar of Time. A was formerly known as Divus, the Keeper of Time, until the fracture of the Pantheon. A constructed a machine, the Enigmachina, to automate air duties before disappearing. Now, as the Gearmaker, the full extent of air duties is merely maintaining the Enigmachina. Rumor has it that A has since turned to alcoholism. Something else to note here is that the Gearmaker, alongside every other avatar of time, are all part of a multiversal council known as the Timekeepers, which are dedicated to preserving the stability of timelines throughout the multiverse. Integration points. An integration point is a phenomenon in which one experiences a point of convergence between timelines, where every single possibility is simultaneously true, specifically in regards to themselves, in which they receive a glimpse into every possible version of themselves. Integration points are commonly experienced by falling out of time, so to speak. Temporal apotheosis. Object 95, Temporal Apotheosis, is basically an in-universe explanation for retcons in the lore. It was believed to have been created by the Gearmaker, but in the timeline in which the object was documented, the Gearmaker apparently never existed. This in itself is believed to be another consequence of the object's properties. The premise of Object 95 is that old retconned lore belongs to alternate timelines that were erased by the object, and any existing remnants of that retconned lore in the current timeline are believed by its inhabitants to be a result of the Mandela effect. Visually, the object appears like a Victorian-era pocket watch, but it conceals a digital timer underneath its case that counts down from 2 months. Once the timer reaches 0, a cataclysmic event, almost like an integration point on a mass scale, will supposedly occur, in which multiple timelines collide, effectively erasing them and resulting in one new timeline. However, some people will still be able to recall fragments of the erased timelines as quote-unquote false memories. The concept is similar to a dragon break in the Elder Scrolls lore. The Flicker. The Flicker was a Backrooms-wide event which occurred in the lore of the Fandom and Convergence wikis on February 1st, 2016. It resulted in the transformation of several levels into their current state, such as level 6.1, level 922, and level exclamation point, which has since become a long-forgotten exclamation. This event had far-reaching and long-lasting consequences which last to this day, such as the standardization of the Casper-Bray numbering system and racial tensions between glowfolk and penumbras. A similar event also occurred in the Blackout canon on the wiki.wiki. Ad Astra. Blip 03, also known as Ad Astra, was a localized distortion of space-time within level 78, with certain properties that classified it as a sublevel. On January 18, 2022, Entity 404 was consumed by Entity 52, Null 06. As a result, Null 06 unleashed a massive energy wave which destroyed most of the devices in Level 78's space station. This placed the space station on a crash course with Ad Astra. It was originally calculated that this collision would occur on July 26, but then it turned out that people would only observe it by then, and the actual collision would occur on January 27th. And so it came to pass on that date, as Level 78's space station collided with Ad Astra, killing all who remained on board. Solaris had apparently attempted to prevent this from occurring, but failed, and so she harbors a great deal of guilt. Black Knights. So, I'll be the first to admit that this is one of the few entries on this iceberg that I lack an intimate understanding of, so most of this will be directly sourced from the actual pages. Also, there isn't a whole lot of serious art attributed to this either, so I'll have to make do with some shitposts if necessary. Sort of like the Pantheon, the Black Knights are both a canon and a group, and I have to explain both in order to paint a proper picture since the function of the group is tied to the premise of the canon. Basically, in this canon, the Backrooms are a manifestation of the Jungian collective subconsciousness, and it can be accessed with a device known as the Highway-Mutt Encephalographic Link Machine, or HELM. It could essentially allow one to telepathically control a computer by directly linking it to their brain, eliminating the need for most traditional hardware and software. The Black Knights themselves are a paramilitary force employed to perform corporate espionage and eliminate targets with discretion on behalf of Highway-Mutt Industries, the corporation responsible for creating the helm. They enter the Backrooms, conduct their operations, and then return to their base somewhere in the front rooms. This makes them one of the few groups across the entire Backrooms mythos besides, like, Async, who are capable of freely traversing between the front rooms and Backrooms at will. Of course, there's deeper lore beyond this, but I don't think I could properly explain it without butchering it, so if you would like to know more, you should check it out for yourself. Zehuti. To properly explain this, I first need to explain some surrounding lore that might initially seem unrelated, but just bear with me. First, let's talk about Entity 189, the Machina. They are an extinct species of organic creatures inhabiting and controlling cybernetic bodies, basically like bionicles. What makes them noteworthy is their very sudden and mysterious disappearance. The only clues as to what happened come in the form of the ruins left behind by the Machina. One such ruin is level 811, the Titanus Sepulchrum, Latin for Titan's deathbed, dating at least as far back as 3189 BC. Now, we both know that this wouldn't even be a level page if there wasn't some kind of gimmick, so let's just skip to that part. Scattered throughout the site are what seem to be fragments of a giant ancient robot. This robot, named Zehuti, was in fact a mech suit, formed from the melted down remains of Machina, 1024 to be exact. Zehuti was one of many such mecha known as Titans, which were created by the Machina and piloted by members of the Lost in a war against an unknown race of entities. On some Lancer shit. The last time it had seen battle was nearly 5,000 years ago. Zehuti is one of the few remaining Titans. Like the Machina, most disappeared after experiencing a sort of rapture in which they united with their mysterious deity, known only as the Great Answer. Deleted Level 14. When you visit the article for Level 14 on the Backrooms Wikidot, you will find this page describing a red forest with a deceptive format screw style that has since become quite formulaic. However, this was not the original level in the slot. If you visit an older version of the article on the Wayback Machine, you will instead find an abandoned military hospital. So now, you're probably wondering what's so important about either of these two versions of the page. Well, this iceberg entry isn't necessarily about Level 14 itself, but rather a different page titled Deleted Level 14, which is yet another in-universe explanation for retcons. The page is framed as a tale, which starts out unassumingly. However, further into the story, you'll notice that a bunch of deleted pages are linked, and pieces of retconned lore are referenced. Similarly to Object 95, the characters in the tale are finding and recalling fragments of things erased from their timeline. Eventually, the The original level 14 from before its rewrite is discovered in the in-universe database, even though the current version of level 14 had supposedly always existed. Later, a character has a dream of level 14 being destroyed by mysterious beings represented only by colored auras. Though not confirmed, it is highly likely that these beings are Entity 467, the Staff. Empyreans. The children of the Empyrean Sea, or Empyreans for short, are the splintered fragments of Veritas, the Pillar of Truth, which failed to unite into a whole pillar to begin with. Thus, these fragments instead adopted individuality by mimicking the conceptual spheres of other pillars, becoming known as the Empyreans. The Empyreans are supposedly responsible for directly creating the backrooms of the fandom wiki. The Blue Channel. The Blue Channel is a hazy blue void which encompasses and contains the entire cosmology of the Backrooms mythos, meaning that every version and interpretation of the Backrooms is within the Blue Channel. Not only that, but it is also implied to contain every version of the front rooms and other unknown realities, including the real world that you and I occupy. One can swim through the Blue Channel just like water, and the Blue Channel is home to its own races of entities, such as the Saberzoa. Super Almond Water. This isn't about Super Almond Water in itself, because honestly, who even gives a shit about that? This is more about the lore implications in the Super Almond Water page. But before that can be explained, I need to briefly explain Level Domain. It basically serves as an omniscient repository of knowledge for all possible information. In the Super Almond Water page, MEG researchers had asked the Level Domain to produce an objective description of the Backrooms. The result basically assigns a bunch of new words to familiar terminology in the lore. The Backrooms is, in fact, apparently a giant organism named Dados. Levels are referred to as knots, and the inhabitants of the Backrooms are characterized as microorganisms, with humans specifically being called Etennial. Universes are designated with the letter U, followed by a string of 6 numbers. This confirms that there are at least 1 million universes in the multiverse, but it can be assumed that since the multiverse is infinite, the number can go higher if needed. The front rooms of the backroomswiki.lore is designated as U749690. Level 403. This is another page which assigns a more objective terminology to familiar concepts in the lore. Here, the Blue Channel is referred to as the Gnunga Gap. It also reveals that locations can be assigned coordinates within the Blue Channel. The coordinates of level 403 are 169, 460, 190, 55, 169, 108, 7, 483, 209, 105, 473. The Middle Sorts. The Middle Sorts serves as a nexus to every possible version of the Backrooms, residing at the center of the Blue Channel at the coordinates of 00. It physically appears as a waiting room, in which visitors can be transported to any level of their choosing out of any Backrooms canon, which are all compiled in one conglomerative database. The Middle Sorts are operated by a group of beings named Molly, Simon, Ben, and Ava, belonging to a species known as the Corpus Cores. Despite the importance of their role, the Corpus Cores themselves don't really appear to have any kind of godlike power, nor do they seem to take their job that seriously. Backrooms Remodeling Co. The Backrooms Remodeling Company is a mysterious group with equally mysterious origins and motives. They are primarily composed of entities known as TV heads, believed to be a part of Entity 191 species. Their modus operandi is to revamp, redecorate, remodel, or otherwise improve levels of the Backrooms. Despite their passion and dedication, they aren't very, great at their job, unfortunately. Thus, many jobs have ended in disaster or death. Despite their incompetence, there is no doubting the resources at the disposal of the remodeling company. They wield highly advanced technology, such as reality fresheners, which are one of the few things capable of reversing liminalization within a space. While the remodeling company has done work in various different versions of the Backrooms, it is theorized that the group itself is entirely unique within the Blue Channel, given that they have done work for multiversal organizations like the Middle Sorts in the past. It is also believed that the remodeling company is a subsidiary of the business owned by Entity 191, due to being of the same general species. Travelers of Stars. The Travelers of Stars, also known as the Outsiders, are a highly advanced technocratic race of interdimensional reality warpers, comparable to the Forerunners from Halo. Little is known of their biology, but it is unlikely that they are organic and more likely that they are composed of a nebulous matter and mechanical parts. They aren't native to the Backrooms and are rather exploring it in the same way that astronauts explore space. They are very easy to recognize with their ornate gilded armor, which stands out against the darkness of the Backrooms. In spite of their great power and intimidating stature, the travelers are rather friendly to wanderers and do not desire conflict if unnecessary. Honestly, the shortness of this section does very little justice to the Travelers of Stars. There is so much rich lore behind these guys, and not to mention, the art and visuals are breathtaking, but it would be impossible to condense everything into this one section. I may end up making a video entirely about these guys, but in the meantime, I highly recommend you read the pages for yourself. Marauders. The Marauders are rivals to the Travelers of Stars, with an equivalent degree of power and technology. As implied by their name, they are interdimensional pirates and warlords seeking to pillage and plunder the Backrooms for its resources. Unlike the Paragons, which consist of both males and females, the Marauders seem to consist solely of males. They are also known to brainwash and enslave humans and other entities. Basically, they're like an evil version of the Travelers, but that isn't to say they aren't cool or unique in their own right. Their designs are pretty sick, all things considered. The Staff. Entity 467, also known as the Staff, are an enigmatic race of beings inhabiting the Blue Channel, enforcing the rules of the Backrooms throughout the multiverse. It is believed that most other multiversal organizations, such as the Backrooms Remodeling Co., the Timekeepers, and the Middle Sorts Workers, all answer to them, and that the Staff will occasionally perform audits on these various groups. When someone is found to be breaking the rules of the Backrooms, they are imprisoned by the Staff within You Cheated, which was created by them. The Staff claim to serve a being known as the Crystal King, which is believed to most likely be a Jindu, the Pillar of Order, which is also the Dark Sovereign's oversoul. Directed Control. Directed Control, also known as Phenomenon 1 on the Backrooms Wikidot, is a phenomenon in which some characters are aware of their fictional nature, though in-universe these people are perceived as delusional. It's basically like how Deadpool can break the fourth wall. Notable users of this phenomenon are the Actor, the Maker from the Whiteout, and the Liminal Archives Keymaster. In fact, there was a tale in which the Actor and the Maker interacted, called The Actor versus the Author, which I highly recommend you check out. Pandora's Pythos. Pandora's Pythos is basically a MacGuffin/plot device from a plotline on the Backrooms Wikidot involving an alternate version of Entity 120, the Officinarum. In this plotline, the Officinarum gained sentience, and his original goal of protecting humans from hostile entities that he was programmed with somehow mutates into killing everyone and becoming God. You know, par for the course of the most self-aware AI stories. To accomplish this, he constructed a cylinder-shaped device known as Pandora's Pythos, which harvests the divine essence of beings. He then proceeded to go on a killing spree, slaughtering a bunch of godlike entities and stealing their power. This eventually caught up to him, however, as he trapped himself within his own meta-narrative and was imprisoned within You Cheated. From here, however, the Officinarum delivered visions to the AI known as Coco within the Pantheon universe, instructing her to create a new Pandora's Pythos for Backrooms Robotics. A prototype of this new Pythos was used to fight the Horned Keymaster in the tale Sins of the Father, but was destroyed. Forbidden Info. Phenomenon 43, Forbidden Information, is basically the reason that most mortal humans who come into contact with something related to avatars or pillars end up having their brains melted. To most, reality only consists of 3 spatial dimensions, since normal humans like you and I can only experience and comprehend these 3 dimensions. But in truth, reality is formed of infinite dimensions. Phenomenon 43 is the effects that result from the interaction between humans and knowledge that comes from these higher dimensions. Discerning the nature of the pillars is nigh impossible to lesser beings. A mortal mind is naturally averse to such knowledge, and when confronted by it, will degenerate in failure to comprehend it. To understand the pillars is to understand the truth of reality itself, which shatters the common ego. Any depictions of the pillars, including all the art that I've shown in this video, are merely those which are projected onto them by the observer, for they have no true form. Still, for a mortal to directly observe a pillar, or even a depiction of a pillar, would cause catastrophic psychological and even physical damage. In layman's terms, Phenomenon 43 is basically like a psychic zip bomb in which your mind is overloaded with info-hazardous forbidden knowledge from higher dimensions. Most of the time, this will break your mind if not kill you, though there are rare instances in which beings are able to withstand it, gaining power and possibly becoming avatars themselves, such as the case with the Pillar Scribe, but only through extraordinary circumstances and with grave cost. You Cheated. You Cheated was originally created by Serendipity Narwhal in their Backrooms Endings series. The image comes from a piece of architectural artwork by Gregor Schneider called Doublings, which was displayed at the Museum Franz Gersch in 2008. While You Cheated as a concept is relatively well known in the Backrooms community, this entry refers to a specific iteration on the Pantheon wiki. This version of You Cheated is a multiversal prison constructed by the staff to detain those who violate the rules of reality. Here, they experience a personalized form of hell or limbo tailored to their very soul. Some high-profile prisoners include the Officinarum, Noir, and the Liminal Archives Keymaster, among other beings of similar caliber. Boggist. Throughout the Backrooms mythos, there are many examples of giant serpentine entities, many of which serving the role of a cataclysmic world-eater. Examples of this archetype include the Leviathan, the Serpent, and Jormungandr of the Serpent's Void, among many others. Boggist is the purest embodiment of this archetype, from which all of the aforementioned entities descend as lesser aspects. It is described as one of the most destructive forces in all of existence, surpassed in power and age only by the final entry on this iceberg. The Pillars. According to manuscripts written by the Pillar Scribe, the most fundamental and powerful force in all of existence are concepts. Concepts are personified as the Pillars, the highest authority responsible for everything. They have created, oversee, and encompass every reality, and therefore every canon of the Backrooms, from the Fandom Wiki, to the Wikidot, to Liminal Archives, even to Kane Pixels and American Horror Stories, and everything else in between. Each pillar represents a unique concept, and every possible concept theoretically has a corresponding pillar. They even transcend all forms of narratives and fiction itself, with one page showing the real-life authors of Backrooms lore being influenced by the pillars to write whatever they dictate. Pillars are less characters and more background forces of nature, pulling the strings from behind the scenes and spinning the threads of fate. The objective of a pillar is to spread the influence of its respective concept. Their primary means of achieving this is creating or adopting beings throughout every reality to serve as their avatars, like pieces in a game of 4D chess. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much to everyone still watching. Your support means a lot to me, as the Backrooms is something I am very passionate about, and I wanted to share that passion with others in a way that hasn't really been done before. If you enjoyed this, then your support would be appreciated by liking this video, subscribing to this channel, and or leaving a positive comment. These things would mean a lot to me. If this video does well, I'll most likely return with some other videos that I've hinted at wanting to make. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and stay safe, Wanderers.